Here we go. Hey everyone, welcome to P.O. Stuart, DROWNED Kingdom Saga YouTube channel. And this evening, I am so honored to have two of my one of my friends with me, Layla Goushey and Janny Wurts. Uh, I'm just so privileged that they're willing to discuss my work. In this case, it's A Pack of Wolves, Book 5 in the DROWNED Kingdom Saga. Unfortunately, Taylor from Maed Between the Pages, the awesome Taylor, couldn't make it tonight. We will miss her dearly, but we're gonna talk about this bad boy tonight. So thank you, Janny and Layla, so much for coming. And yeah, I'm so excited to chat to you about my fifth book in the series. So we now, just for the edification of anyone watching, we'll just have a few minutes, and by this point, anyone who's tuning in has likely read the book. Anyone who's going to watch the replay has read the book. But some people I know bookmark it and they watch it later after they've read the book. So, but for those of you who have not read the DROWNED Kingdom Saga up to this point, this will be mostly spoiler filled. So just a warning there about that. So I think we'll start off, if that's okay, with just having general overall first impressions, non-spoilery impressions of the book from both Layla and Janny. So Layla, what'd you think?
I mean, I loved it. I was very, it has many exciting scenes and things to think about. And I have to say, I truly always regret when I finish reading these books because I'm like, I'm jumped out of the world, and I want to get back into the world. So I'm definitely waiting for the next one. I think Othman is Othran. I don't know why I say that wrong all the time. I think Othran has grown as a character, and we understand a lot more, but not everything about what has been happening this whole time, and the reality he thinks he's been living in, and then the true reality. So I thought that came across real well. And really, every other character, is having their own trial in one way or another. Sometimes not as desperate, but also important, and it makes the characters richer. So yeah, just a lot more to say.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much. Those are some excellent observations. Thank you. Yeah, I'm so glad that it came through that Othran is developing, he's evolving, and that there's other characters going through struggles and trials. However, Othran's front and center, Othran's evolution took a real turn
Yeah.
in this book. So thank you for saying that, Jenny.
I think that this book is a fulcrum because if you look at the way that you've assembled your story blocks, you brought a lot of arcs to a finish point. You brought a lot of growth to a conclusion point. You brought a lot of recognition and character resolution to a lot of the flawed beginnings. And it feels like you brought these characters to a pinnacle point just so you can blow the foundation out from under them. So I feel like we just dove off the cliff into chaos. And I'm anxious to see where you take it from here because it's like spilling the BBs out of the jar. All the known trajectories hit some form of a high point or a mark or a resolution, only to see what props Othran up is going to come unraveled super fast because he's going to be hit on one of his weaknesses, which is now he's got to answer to a woman and an overlord, and he ain't going to like that. And he doesn't do grief well.
Mhm.
So his hold on the future has sort of been ripped out from under him. And what's he going to do freaking next?
Those are
So yeah, I
all,
would have
yeah.
expected this to be a midpoint of a story. Instead, you've tilted it this way. So we got 2 more volumes to go. So it'll be very, very interesting to see how unpredictably you resolve the entire mess. And of course, some of the greater things that were left hanging, like Night Soul, have not resolved at all. Some of the most powerful enemies that Othrin has made have not resolved at all. We still have the Anib hanging out there unresolved. We still have the Barafetti hanging out there unresolved, and we have Night Soul hanging out there unresolved. Plus, one of the mainstays that held Othrin in check was Welly's kingdom, and he's dead. And Senti, who was the reliable heir, is off the board. So I see that as another thing that's going to tilt things into chaos in ways we don't expect. We've sort of dealt with the brother, but now we know that what the Anchali is. So I see a whole new set of wild cards being flung onto the poker table.
Yeah, that's excellent points, Jenny. There are a bunch of new wild cards. I think that, again, excellent observations. I think at this point, we're just going to go straight into spoilers. Again, this is book 5 of the ongoing series of 7 books. So, I think it's time to get straight into the spoilers. But as we start this section off, so just to be clear, folks, for you, those of you watching, those who don't want to hear, don't want to get spoiled, come back and watch it later, another time after you read book 5 of Pack of Wolves, because we can go straight in to the spoiler section. So I want to get started by touching on predictions. So funny enough, and Taylor's not here, but I'm going to make Taylor's comments for her. In the analysis that the 4 of us were in for book 4, Alliance Pride, Taylor's predictions, she mentioned that there was, as Janny said, there were still those 3 big kind of conflicts that you figured were brewing. Barafet, what was going to happen with the Anib and Abdallah, and what would happen with Night Soul, but also Earthel. And as Taylor predicted, we did get Othrin v. Earthel. So that was, we got that conflict. How resolved that conflict was, well, I'd like to hear what you two have to say about that. But going to Layla's predictions, she was all on Scylla. And she said that Scylla is going to play a major role, which she did, right? And I like to think in some surprising ways. And that Scylla was going to, take control in a way that she never had. And in a way, she did. So Layla, kudos to you. You nailed that. So and we will get into that. And of course, Janny's prediction, one of the strongest ones, which we talked about. Janny was on this from book 3, if you can believe it. It's so hard to fool her. From book 3, when Othrin was born, she's like, he's toast. He's going to die. And I tried to just keep a straight face whenever she mentioned the younger in his future. She's like, nope, he's toast. And, it's hard to fool Janny. So, and sure enough, in this book, Othrin the Younger dies. And that certainly is going to leave Othrin the Elder in a tizzy. But kudos, Janny, on that prediction. You were insistent. You didn't let go of that one. You said that was going to happen, and that's exactly what happened. And so I'm curious to see from both of you. First, I think I'll go to Layla. If those predictions that you predicted accurately, if they happened in the way that you thought they might happen. So Layla, did your predictions about Scylla and the role she's going to play, did it happen the way you thought?
Not the way I thought, only because I just didn't know where the story would go, but I knew that she would be in the middle of it. So no, I didn't necessarily know she would follow him on a campaign, follow Othrin on a campaign, or, but I did think that her abilities as a mage would be called upon, and that, that she would do something, with that. And I think she proved herself too, because, the last impression, the reason I said that is my impression of her up to that moment was well, my impression was that Othran was underestimating her and ignoring her, and she was just kind of, in a way, he was, not that she was bothersome, but but that, he had all these women, and yet he marries Sila, but he's got all these women on his mind. So it's as if she had to come forward to play some kind of role just because of the way he was underestimating her. She was going to surprise him, and that's what I thought. So yes, in that regard, she did. Yeah.
Oh, that's an excellent point. And yes,
Yeah.
she definitely asserted herself. She refused to be left behind. She refused to be a minor player. She accompanied Othran throughout, his biggest test, his biggest trial so far.
Yeah.
And she refused to just be someone who, when he needed help the most, she refused to abandon him, despite all he'd done. And, Sila, in this book, she's one of the people that Othran has to make amends with. And she holds him to account.
Yeah.
But he finally admits all the wrongs he's done to her, all the affairs he's had. But she forgives him, and shows him, emphatically that she's staying by his side. So, I don't know if that, for some people, I know Janny had mentioned in off-camera discussions in the past that she was surprised by Sila. I don't know if she was surprised by Sila's medal. We'll perhaps hear a bit of that from Janny in a bit. Why? But I think Sila was, for some people, a surprising character in this book. The way she took charge, refused to be set aside, forgave Othran, seemingly, for all the wrongs he'd done, and was that stalwart companion that got him through some of the toughest moments of this book. So I did think that for a lot of you, that itself was surprising. But yes, Layla, those are excellent points. So Janny, maybe a bit about what you thought about Sila, but then to your prediction, why were you so insistent that Othran the Younger wasn't going to make it?
Well, I'll get to that, but let's pursue the Sila thread first. She always seemed the softer and the more retiring and the lesser, less agency than her sister.
Mm-hmm.
She always seemed in her sister's shadow. This book really proved that she's got a real cold steel thread running through the center of her, because she played her cards and she held back playing her cards till she knew she had the ascendant moment. She predicted Othran's death, and she made Othran Senior believe it was going to be him to get what she wanted. She manipulated him into all of those confessions, all of those coming to terms with his flaws, all of that baloney that he had pulled the wool over his own eyes and avoided. She used that, knowing that his son was going to die and not him. So I underestimated how cold a long game she could truly play. Yeah. And so I looked to her as, what the hell is she going to do next? Because Lacey is right out front what she's going to do. There are no hidden cards with her. Sila is the much more dangerous player of the two of them.
Yeah. Lacey may be underestimating her too.
Yeah. Well, you played your cards very well, Paul, because I did not see her being that calculating. And in some ways, she's more calculating than Lacey, because Lacey comes right out and says, I'm going to freaking do this, and I'm going to conquer all this, and I'm going to be the ascendant one. So I'm watching for Sila to topple her sister when the time comes. Let's see if it happens.
I agree with that.
The reason why I thought Othran Jr. would be assassinated was because Othran Sr. put so much stock into pure blood and into Atalantian pride, and he had such affection for Alias. He laid all of his chips in the basket. This is my heir. He even blinded himself to the fact that Othran Jr. was gay, and was going to tolerate that, because, so literally he piled all of his future expectations on him. So I said, anyone who wants to destabilize him would assassinate that kid, or something would take that kid out. I didn't see the heroic death in the war coming. But the destabilization, he was the centerpin of Othrin's future. He was building this kingdom. He was trying to recreate the Atlantean culture. Now he's lost the son that he expected would do that. So now he's going to have to contend with the fact that everything he's standing on is going to be a blend of his past and his future. He no longer has that pureblood son to hold the old guard in line. So what's the old guard going to do? So, plus the fact he's going to take it badly. The thing that surprised me in this book was Urthel. Urthel surprised me because I really thought he ended with a pfft. I didn't see Rupa as being the stronger player. I did not see him being the little finger puppet of Rupa. Or Rupea? How do you pronounce that?
Rupa, yeah, Rupa. Yeah.
Okay, I did not see him being such a weakling. And he played the weaker hand all the way through this book. Whenever he could have took a stand, he crumpled. Whenever he could have stepped forward and dealt with things head on, he deferred to Rupa. When he met with the gods in the woods, he really was kind of a wimp about it. And he pretty much wimped out on the finish of the war. So I was expecting Urthel to be a much more powerful player, considering that he came out swinging in the very first book, didn't confide in his brother, didn't do what his brother expected, had a master plan, and did not call his brother on board. I figured he'd have a bigger card game in the play than he actually did.
Yeah.
But it was Rupa who was wearing the pants in that household.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's an excellent observation. Again, both Layla and Janny. And let's consider this: Urthel, in the beginning, what made him destabilize Atlantean society? Cause or but because he was listening to a woman that he fell for, that he fell for Meg's daughter, and she's the one that led him down that path. And you'll notice that when she died in Downfall of Atlantis, yeah, he survived and he got to go and get a second chance. But then he survives. He communicates with Meg. Meg picks him up. But then he becomes very much a second fiddle to Rupa. Maybe a lack of confidence in that his way failed, right?
He never learned, did he?
Right.
But I really was expecting a stronger hand from him. I was waiting for it, and so it was like, wow, this guy's really a wimp.
And then, of course,
and she's a screaming raven bitch. I mean, bad mix.
and I think the women in general in this book really stood out in terms of their ferocity and their scheming and their overarching.
Welly, even dying. Welly, when he exposed the traitor and let Othrin deal with him, the double gaming them, he was a big factor. I'm going to miss him.
Yes, yeah. And Welly's death was huge. You also saw, I think, a great. I think Hurt played a major role in this book, and maybe we can devote a few minutes to Hurt. Hurt has what I think that when he and Othrin have this confrontation, what Hurt is also PO'd about is that he's been basically fighting, trying to keep the North at bay, trying to protect invasion. And Othrin, meanwhile, in some ways for him, has been glory seeking and has been from day one. And Hurt sacrificed a lot. He's made best friends with this man who, yes, his father was evil and wanted to kill him, but made best friends with this guy who killed his father. He's allowed Othrin's rise, and meanwhile, he's been toiling, right, up north. And he knows Othrin's hiding a secret. He's hiding the secret about what happened with the schools, about the eldest children. And he's pissed off because Othrin hasn't told him all these years. He hid it, he's concealed it. He hasn't told Welly or Eld or any of the Elvish overlords. So you see what happens when Othrin admits it, and it seems like for a minute Hurt's going to kill him. But
Hurt was using him though, because Hurt needed the South off his back to deal with the North. So he tolerated it quite a lot in order,
Exactly.
because he knew Othern had a stiff enough spine to hold that south and would dump in and fight when it was necessary and not spare. So he was using him like a chained dog in some ways.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's an excellent point, Jay. That he needed Othrin as a warlord in the south, but Hurt, he fought courageously. He accomplished the mission. So they saved Eltnia from Sinavia. Not in the way that they thought, perhaps, but Hurt also did a lot of advising to Othrin the Younger. Was very much stepping up and playing that role, giving him sound advice. And Othrin the Younger, and we talked about Hurt just a bit, but I do want to get to Othrin the Younger. Othrin the Younger showed that he has a lot of qualities that could have made him a fantastic king had he lived. Mm-hmm. Right? He showed a lot of qualities, but you also got to see some of the qualities of his two brothers, who are very different from him. The youngest brother, Adam the Early, seems to be much more on that old guard vein. A lot more. He sees himself as much more of the Atalantean side of his heritage, while the second son, Arklan, is much more cleaving to the Outlish side. So, you have to wonder if that's going to cause issues down the road.
It will, because you've destabilized two kingdoms succession.
Yes.
Severely destabilized, because Senti should have inherited. He was the stable heir, and he's off the board. So that kingdom's going to go to shit. Mm-hmm. And now we got two brothers who are falling side to side, or they're going to split the loyalties of that kingdom, whereas Othrin Younger could have united them. These two are going to split it. So whatever Othrin Sr. does is going to have great influence or great lack of influence over that schism that's going to happen. In the meantime, we got Lysie, who really doesn't win her way by loyalty that I can see.
Yeah.
She does it with an iron fist. Yeah. So there's going to be a very nice little nitroglycerin explosion shaking here.
Yeah,
and
that's...
if Othrin backs off and falls into grief like he did after Aliaz died, guess what? He's going to let it happen. Yeah, and it's going to get very, very messy before he wakes back up again. So I see a lot of forces coming to bear, and we still got Night Soul sitting in the wings, and all the other things that are overseas. Sinavia may be subdued, but the other countries that are pissed off are not.
Yeah, and Layla, I also want to ask you, we're talking about some of the characters here. So we saw that with the death of Bartho, Eld, who can't have children, who's married to Viva, who can't have children, is now became Luncheon. And it seems that it was hinted at the end that basically the heir to Luncheon is going to be Hyrus, the haughty princess, the she-wolf of Carthlugi.
Yeah, the haughty princess who is really, really headstrong and will walk into danger until her head gets lopped off and not give a shit. She's not going to make a very good ruler. She's kind of got too hot a head.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. I don't see her as, I like her as a character.
But she's unstable. She's unstable.
Right. She's unstable and, just does jump into things because she did get herself captured. And not kind of sit back and think, okay, 3 of my most capable troops, have been slaughtered by somebody. Yeah, let me just run into the middle of this with very few, people.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
She's got slash and burn impulse, and I don't see that she's reined those in at all.
Right. So, I do think she has a future of some sort, but I don't see her being put in a position of power. Well,
let's put it this way: which character, if Othrin falls into grief, which character has the sheer powerful force of reason, vision, and leadership to step forward and unite this mess? I don't see any one of those characters with the charisma and the wisdom to grab the reins.
Right.
So if Othran gets knocked flat by grief, which there's no reason to believe he won't, what are we going to see? All these headstrong people and weak people are going to fragment everything at the very moment when they probably need to stand up to Lycée, because she's not going to rule wisely either. She's got the power. She's going to fuck it up. We still got Night Soul, and we still got these other things out in the wings. So it's going to be like vultures feeding on carrion, as far as I can see.
Yeah. You know, I think, well, it's obvious none of them are self-reflective like Othran the Younger was. And I think there's a lot to talk about there about how he gave up the love of his life to truly follow the code and values that he had committed to, you know. At the same time, he's such an opposite of Othran, you know, who has slept his way across two continents. No, and so I think, you know, I think Scylla may end up being someone that I think she's on a trajectory to hold everything together.
You could be very right, because she's got such a cold sense of long playing vision.
She's the only one I can think of that might be able to at least.
But one thing she doesn't have is Othran's ability to pull people together in a crisis and to make them act. She doesn't have the ability to lead the war host. She doesn't have the ability to rise to action. And even though Othran had so many flaws, he did have moments of self-reflection. He did have moments of recognizing where he'd goofed. And even if he didn't admit the mistakes, he didn't necessarily repeat them, except for the fact sleeping his way across the continent. And we now know why that was going on.
Yeah.
So without his ability to pull the active leadership together to lead the troops to war, Scylla's scheming may in the long run be able to try to hold things together, but I don't think she's got everything it takes to actually execute it. Somehow she's going to have to shake Othran out of whatever becomes of him in the next book.
I agree. I think Thurl may have a role to play here as well.
Who?
Thurl.
Okay, yeah, well, Thurl, yeah, he's always been the mainstay.
Yeah, he's a steady presence, and he is a leader. He's not maybe a self-reflective leader. The two younger boys, I just, you know, they have a lot of growing to do because, frankly, they were treated as the second sons.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a whole thing about second sons and royalty. Well, just like Othran. Yeah. So, you know, there's some patterns here, I think. And really, I wanted to say, too, Othran and his brother, they really are like two sides of the same coin, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and their emotional reactions. And I think what happened with Erthal is that he was the pinnacle of a long line of rulers. And the institution was as much the reason for his power as his personal life. Whereas,
that's where I expected him to go, though. That institutionally he would have said, "You are the second prince, and I own everything. I'm going to claim back all of the people you took." I expected that he was going to challenge Othran's supremacy of the remains of that culture, and it didn't happen.
Well, he tried, and they rejected him. He tried in the battle.
Yeah, but Rupa was running the whole thing. Rupa was running the whole thing, and she was never going to be accepted by that old Gar. So I really expected him to traditionally say, "You're the usurper here," and step in and try to take Istrealm. Yeah, I expected that.
He tried, but the old guard, led by the Bard, for whatever reasons, rejected him, and it was quite the moment when, Othrin was essentially affirmed as he's the king. He's the king of the Atalanteans, essentially. What's left of them? He's the one they've chosen now. Urthel abandoned them. Urthel, rejected that whole those whole survivors that fled Atalantic. So, but those are really amazing
Well,
points.
they were also the old guard that fled with Othrin were the traitors.
Yeah.
So they were already considered traitors. But I really expect Urthel to try to reclaim his heritage in a more forceful way.
Yeah, but he seems to have given himself over to being a druid. He's given himself over to being Rupa's sidekick.
Yep, that was exactly it. I didn't expect him to crumple that way and throw away all of his heritage and all of his glorified upbringing.
Yeah.
I didn't expect him to cede that quite so quickly to his little insolent younger brother who isn't even the true blood of the kings.
Yeah, and wasn't it interesting that Urthel knew all along? Urthel knew all along what was going on with Othrin and the Anchawi, and he knew, and that was what caused the resentment, and that's what caused the lack of trust.
But that's why I expected him to play that card with the old guards, saying, "This is a bastard. You're following the wrong bloodline," and it kind of went crump, and it didn't happen.
He tried, but he didn't raise that, and he didn't raise that because deep down, Urthel doesn't want it. Deep down, Urthel's love for Othrin and Othrin's love for Urthel supersedes all of their enmity. That became clear, I think, in the book.
Something that I thought. I mean, kind of back to the institutional thing, just in that Urthel didn't seem to have earned his place, although I mean he had his rulership because of who he was.
Chopped off his finger.
But also just by being influenced by Mag's daughter and starting to see things differently. That's kind of a in relation to in comparison to, like, say, Othrin the Younger, who thinks, okay, I have to discipline myself. I have to give these things up. He never really had to do that. He just sort of floated into his...
But because he had to endure the shattering of his father's image. If you think about that. He did all of this stuff because he was trying to live up to his father, and then his father levels with him, and he sees all of the flaws, and he had to step beyond that. So that was a really heroic moment for him. It was as powerful as him staying faithful to Candlelove, even though...
you mean the Younger.
Yeah, the Younger. He saw, we all go through that where our parents' image shatters and they're no longer the perfect idol that we thought they were.
Right.
The shattering of that image was rather spectacular.
Yeah. No, that's...
he rose above it. So I feel that it's really tragic that we have lost him because he could have been the major unifying force to this whole mess.
I agree.
And he could have kept his father's flaws in check and stabilized it, and now that counterweight is gone.
Right, exactly. And that's what I mean, that Urthel never had to do any of that. And so he kind of is easily led then, and kind of off in a hippie. he's going through his hippie phase or something. I'm 62. I still think about the hippies. But whereas Othrin has made a lot of mistakes, but he has earned. He's flawed, but he has earned some respect of his people.
He did the job. He protected that kingdom. Yeah. He expanded the alliance.
Yeah.
He protected the South. He's done a lot of admirable things for all of the stupidity that he did. The major task that he had was to stabilize the South, and he has accomplished that.
Yeah.
Except for the little destabilizing things like Barto,
Yeah. Well, and now we have a situation. I want to go back to Horus, where Horus is poised to become the ruler of both Luncheon and Carthage, potentially. And I don't think Horus is the kind of ruler that is going to just bend the knee to Lycie easily, because she doesn't like her already. What do you think that's going to be like? If Horus ends up being ruler of both Luncheon and Carthluge, and okay, she's reporting to Lycee, but then the second creation thing. Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna go over well. Hirus is, and now Hirus is a mage. We've discovered Hirus is a mage, so that's going to come with other powers. And
Who's going to be first to ally with Night Soul and swat the other one down?
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh.
That's a good one.
Yeah, we got I gave you a bit of a fake out there where we thought we saw Night Soul and maybe the end of Othrin near the end of the book, but actually turned out to be
Othrin is scared
Lycee.
of him. That's the one thing he's really terrified of.
Yeah,
His Night Soul. So he thought he saw his nightmare come true, and he missed the one that was really coming inside like a ton of bricks. But I wonder if one of those two women is gonna. And it might be Lycee because she's had relations with the wife or the mother.
I mean,
she was a high muckety muck.
Yeah, she's the great Wicca. I mean, at the end of the day, Night Soul is married to Barbas, who is sister to both Scylla and Lycee, half sister. So I mean, what that means at the end of the day, we don't know.
No, but it's dynamite waiting to happen.
But Othrin has killed Night Soul's mother, so I cannot envision a scenario where eventually Night Soul and Othrin have to go.
Oh yeah, they do.
It has to be it has to
so
go down.
It's probably going to be Lycee because Othrin's going to give her too much trouble. But we'll see. We'll see. Night Soul is still a very dark horse sort of entity because when Night Soul acts, it's devastating, but we don't quite know what triggers it. We know that he holds his enmities very, very close to his chest, but what event makes him cross the line and decide now is a moment for my vengeance? That has been kept very dark.
Yeah. Well, I predict you will see that before the series is concluded.
And I still am teased, and I'm not going to spoil, but you gave me that little short story where the magic comes from the Enib, so I'm not writing the Enib, but there's some real dark stuff stirring there.
So, just to confirm, Layla, you did not read the short story yet, is that correct?
I did not.
Yeah, okay, well, there's some real creepy, I mean, hair standing on, horrifically creepy stuff behind their magic system. And if that decides to play in these last two volumes, it's going to sit you up fast.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I sent you a copy. That was the Shapers of World anthology, Layla. There is an arc, an arc I would have sent you, and I have a short story in there called Forest Dark. So if you have a chance to read that, I would encourage, especially before book 6, that you check that out because it does give you some teases into some of the backstory and power of some of the Enib that you might find very interesting.
The Enib were always presented as so much wiser and so much more powerful and so much more civilized and so much more, and that short story kind of peels that image back just a little bit.
I don't see it in my list from you.
Let me make sure that you have it.
Yeah.
I think I sent it to you. I will double check.
It's an eye popper, Layla.
Okay. Yeah, because I definitely would have read it. Maybe I've overlooked it, but
Night Soul and the Annie. That would be interesting.
Yeah, I mean
We'll see.
I mean, I think that you will enjoy it, Layla. Okay. I'm just gonna make sure. I'm gonna just take a moment to resend it in case for some reason you don't have it, because I think it's definitely worth. And for those of you who would like a little sample, if you've been wondering about weighing into the Drowned Kingdom Saga, you're not sure you want to invest in a book in a series of that size and and length. Maybe it's maybe checking out the short story.
If you want the next drop of nitroglycerin in the mix, it's waiting in the wings.
It is worth
because it sure sat me up. I said, "Whoa, I didn't see this coming."
Yeah, maybe just a little taste of my writing as well, right? So But it is an excellent anthology, though, I must say. There's some brilliant authors in the anthology. I do encourage you to read the whole anthology, but my story, Forest Dark, is about in the middle. So, you can either skip to that and read that first and read the other ones, or just read it straight through from beginning to end. But I do think it will, as Janny said, it will give you some insights into the end of that perhaps you weren't aware of and weren't expecting. So, now speaking of insights, what did you two ladies think about the character of Udin, the crusty, irascible god of the North? What did you think of him?
I didn't see him coming at all. You've had religion being a major force in these books as far as people's belief, but the gods are actually stepping onto the game boards here. And they're messing with Urthel, and they're messing with Othran in ways that we don't know yet. And of course, that brings up the Antali, who's opposed to the gods. So there's a higher realm conflict working into the weave here, and you just drop that stone into the pond, and it's going to cast some ripples. But which direction you're going to take it, I don't know. But I assume that you're building towards the Antali, and all his little baby bastards are going to have to choose sides, and that there will be a bigger conflict over top of all this other crap. And are there any gods driving the Anib? We don't know. So there's a whole other game board been revealed, but it's like 4-dimensional chess. It's still just a little bit out of our. It's above my pay grade at this point, given what you've given on these books.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Layla. Sorry.
Oh, well, one thing I thought it was interesting how Urthel was surprised and was more respectful of the experience, I think, than Othran.
Except he didn't listen. He didn't take anything to heart.
He didn't.
He didn't change his behavior. He didn't alter his views. So all the toe kissing did no good. I saw Othran's interaction with the god figure is much more honest.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But he did go back to Rupa. I'm talking about Urthel. Went back to Rupa. It's like, guess who I met?
But it didn't change him.
It didn't do anything. Right. It didn't do a thing. Because as soon as Rupa shut down the point about maybe we shouldn't own slaves, and Rupa just completely shut that down. So yeah,
Othran the wimp. Urthel the wimp. See what I'm saying? He continually caves to whatever force is pushing him.
Right.
So he met a freaking god.
Right.
Freaking God gave him a warning and said, your brother, for all of his flaws, has got more ethic than you do. And he went back, and Ruthah goes,
right.
And he just goes,
right.
So yeah, Urthel was a big to me. I was expecting more fireworks. I was expecting more spine from him. But you're right, he never showed it to begin with. But he spent all of the first book flat on his back, screwing.
And maybe that's his trial, to learn to stand up for himself against Rupa. I mean, because, again, previously he had people jump at his every word just because, he wandered into the kingship.
But wasn't that warning with the god? I saw that slave revolt coming. I said, the slaves are going to tip this.
Yeah.
And he had a straight up warning. You will lose this war if you don't dump this prejudice and do something about it. And if he had freed all those slaves, they would have fought to the death for him.
Right.
Right. He didn't do it. He didn't do it. So in many ways, he's stupider than Othran is.
Right. They're very much alike. And Layla, excellent points by both of you. When Layla said Othran and Urthel, two sides of the same coin, I think she nailed it. I think she nailed it.
And the other point I want to make from the point of Othran is supposedly doesn't believe in any of these gods, but they keep showing up to him and forcing him to contend with what he says does not exist, but they do exist. And I think Othran okay, this might be a forecast, I don't know. Arthur could end up being a better druid than Urthel.
Oh,
You know,
that's an interesting one.
once he gets through his grief, because he is a druid. I mean, or he has the talents for it. Because
Yeah,
these,
But he's a wild card because he's not trained. So,
right,
yeah, he's got
yeah,
the power without the restraint.
yeah.
right, yeah.
So when that
No,
little bomb goes off, it'll be interesting.
no, those are excellent points. That is amazing. That's amazing. I think Udin confirming that Othrin is half demigod, that the Anchali is evil. The Anchali is essentially the equivalent, of the Antichrist. That the the or Lucifer, take it how you will. That the Anchali was cast out of heaven and is actively working against the gods to destroy the world. That Othrin, that there is a that the Anchali will breed a human, part human being that will destroy, the world. That like all these
And that's
things.
going to be Lucifer.
Okay, well, I mean, there's only so many options now because one of Othrin's
It's
children
going to
are
be
dead.
Lucifer because the symbolism of his name and the way Lysi has kept him separate from his father and his father disowned him. I see that as I could be wrong, but
Well, I guess we'll see. He's got 5 kids. He's got one who's an Anibian princess, out in
well,
southern
that one could be a mess too because
southern
given where
land.
she's coming from.
He's got one that would have been potentially the queen of lunch, but now is disowned and banished, out to Pythia. He's got his 2 trueborn sons who, are now one of the second who was his first of his children. Lysi is now going to be presumably the heir to his throne, and the other one, the younger one, and then he's got Lucifer, right? So I mean, we don't know where this is going. Well, sorry to say, I know where it's going, of course, but it's hard to tell based on threads. But Udin confirmed a lot of interesting things. He also confirmed that the gods are real; they all exist. They're kind of like cohesive in a way, but yet separate and autonomous. That they all, they all talk and they all agree on certain things. He confirmed that yes, the single god decided to destroy Atlantics. The mages were involved, but also the single god felt that Atlantis was corrupt and it was time for them to go. And also, but most importantly, they wanted to take Othrin out. And how do you feel as someone like Othrin that's confirmed for you that basically, the god that you've worshipped and revered and done all these things for wanted to assassinate you and destroy an entire civilization to do so? I mean, Othrin's mind, for Othrin even to be sane at this point with all the stuff he's gone through.
Except he wrote the guy off as not really. He doesn't have Urthel's belief and reverence. Otherwise, maybe he would be in conflict. But the fact that he shrugged it off and said, this doesn't signify possibly as a saving grace at this point. But I see Lucifer as the dark horse here. And I think he has the potential to be extremely dangerous because he is the son also of one of the most powerful mages on the continent.
Yes, he is. And he's seemingly the one who's going to inherit everything overall. If Lysi dies, Lucifer is the high.
And it may be all of them having a big rumble. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that this book showed you is that, with Lysi in charge now of the continent, and seemingly with Andala's blessing, if not outright support, that doesn't mean that's going to bring peace.
It's not going to. Because since when has Lysi ever done anything with a level head?
Right.
And Andala, she's a snake in the grass if given the magic system that's running her country. And we don't know what her gods are doing either.
Yeah, there's a lot of play here. We're not.
And she's got her son established a foothold in the south. So there's sort of Andala's plan is probably as deep and dangerous as Night Souls in its own way, but she has not revealed her hand yet. But the fact she planted her son in that court and then arranged for him to take control of the landing point in the south, and then she backed Lysy in the north. Don't you see a pincher move coming? I do.
Yeah,
and Night Soul sitting in the fucking middle of it.
Yeah.
So it's going to get interesting.
Yeah, the Sanae seems to be wiped off the board as a credible threat. All their kingdoms are disparate and they're all shot to hell now. Othrin, though, as you aptly point out, Lysy, with Lysy, he's been given the title of the warlord of Middle Eltnia. So, and there was a point in this book where he was definitely thinking, I should be the imperator. I should be the one. After all I've done, it shouldn't be Lysy, it should be me. But his sense of duty, his sense of honor, his sense of guilt, his sense of compelled him to, oh no, I'm going to follow her summons, even if that means my death and the death of all my family. I'm going to be true. I'm not going to aspire for that. And then when Lysy makes her play, he and as always, Othrin gets something out of her. He gets that slave army to become his subjects and take over Meridia, the realm that Night Soul destroyed, to help use it as a bit of a buffer. But he bends the knee and he becomes, the warlord, right? But he still only has the territory he has, and Lysy has basically won, the whole thing.
With the Anib Queen's backing.
Yeah, seemingly. But
so what is the Anib Queen is? What chess pieces is she moving on this board? We don't know.
Yeah, what's really going on with the Anib, and what's really going on with somebody like Lysy who schemed and as Janny aptly said, Lysy from day one said, my plan is to take over the continent, and she's done that now.
And she wanted Othrin with her from day one. She said, if you join with me, we will be the pinnacle of power here. And he wouldn't buy it. So he's not going to buy her as overlord either.
Yeah.
Because she insisted if she married him and he would be the pinnacle of power with her, but he had to kowtow to her. He did not then, he will not now.
Yeah, and a lot of things came back to bite Othrin in this book, but my question to both of you is, have we seen the last of Othrin having to atone for what could be perceived as his sins? Has he made amends now? Is he, the God said basically that, you're flawed, you're messed up. There's some pauses, but, we're kind of reserving judgment on.
No, he hasn't, because he walked away and said, I don't believe in you guys.
Yeah. From day one, he was challenging. From day one, he challenged, the fact that Udin existed. He challenged Udin's authority. He basically, and he couldn't believe that he had the stones to do it. It was amusing to him, but he still couldn't believe it. And with Sadra saying, no, Othrin, you just not, and he's like, no, like he doesn't care. And that's the one thing in a way, though, don't you admire with Othrin, because he doesn't care? He doesn't give two shits. Yeah. and maybe that's what it takes to stand up to entities like Night Soul. Maybe that's what it takes to lead armies and lead them to victory, on the strength of your courage and your inspiration and your story.
Well, he always said he was never going to live to old age, that he expected he would die in some fight somewhere along the line. So he's already accepted that one. He's always bit off more than he can chew in every fight we've ever seen him, starting with killing Hurt's father.
Yeah. So
he's like the pit bull. He'll go after the bear and take it by the balls. He doesn't care if he gets ripped apart. He doesn't care. Hey, Jared. Yes, it's a fabulous book.
The amazing fantasy thinker. Thank you so much.
By the way, there are more people on the brink of starting your series right now. I don't want to say who, but
yes, I've heard rumors. I'm very humbled that seems like there's some booktubers that are looking to check it out. I just hope that, I'm always nervous when people say they're gonna.
I will continue to give them pushes.
I'm honored. One amazing booktuber, Jared, who has embraced my series, and I'm so so thankful that he's enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Jared, for joining. Check out the Wonderful Fantasy Thinkers YouTube channel. Awesome content. And I'm very, again, humbled that he's read and reviewed my books on his channel and enjoyed them. He also puts up an interesting equation here for those Arthurian fans. Lucifer equals Mordred of Arthurian legend, and we all know what Mordred was and what he did in the Arthurian legend. So I assume if you feel that often is the Arthur type.
But
figure.
you also echoed Lucifer and Lucifer, who stole the light from the gods and tried to elevate mankind and got struck down from heaven for it. So that's why I'm looking at, you put some biblical symbolism all the way through this series, and you discussed some of it privately with me, so I'm not going to make it public. But I've always wondered about that name, Lucifer, and the fall from heaven and the stealing the light.
Well, we do know that the Enchali seems to play almost somewhat of that role, but that's not the whole story, clearly, because we know the Enchali seemingly needs to use a human being born from him, of his offspring, or from his progeny, that is actually the one that ends up destroying the world. So we'll see. But I do want to get into a few. Now that we're kind of we're past the halfway point of the discussion. I do want to get into a few characters that definitely made their presence felt in the book in various ways. But what did people think of Bartho? Bartho. Very, very, certainly not a very flawed character. Did show some interesting perceptiveness during the War Council. I think actually kind of made some sense. Not ultimately, but said a few things that made sense. But he's not a war leader and doesn't understand the big picture. What do you think of Bartho? Now, at the same time, Bartho is someone who's been wronged by Alfred. This is someone who was wronged, and that created an enmity, and he wanted to assassinate Alfred basically for all he did and for sleeping with his betrothed. What do we think of Bartho?
He ate shit and swallowed it, and his vanity gilded the turd. So I did not have a lot of respect for him, simply because he did not grow a spine. He was wronged repeatedly, and all he did was retreat into his little image, polish the turd.
And I seen him in parallel to Ethel, another leader or another person put into a position of leadership who hasn't necessarily earned it and may not even really have that interest, that true interest in being in that position, but
he wouldn't give it up.
Right, I know.
He had the option to give it up, where Ethel really didn't.
Yeah. Well, there's something here about all, Othran the Younger. Technically, he probably, he could have given up everything for Athen. He would have crushed Othran, the elder. So there's something there. I'm still working on it about hanging on to power or fulfilling roles that people think you should be in. But,
except Othran the Younger did it because he loved his father.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And
he respected his father.
Yes, he did.
And
he saw it as a duty.
His father, so he willingly took on the mantle of that responsibility, whereas Bartho never did.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, and Othran the Younger definitely saw it as a duty and a responsibility that he was born to, that he didn't have a choice. I'm born to be the heir to the throne, so I must do my duty despite not wanting to do it. He didn't really have any interest in it, but he felt it was a duty. Bartho, on the other hand, felt that because it was owed to him, because he was the one born first, that he should have it, but had no idea or clue how to be a good ruler. like the trappings and the gold and the riches, and but didn't want to fight, didn't want to be a warlord, wasn't willing to pay the price. That
was a coward. He turned around and practically lost the war.
Yep, the cloud and fled and got what he deserved in a lot of ways. But at the same time, think about nature versus nurture. Think about the fact that Bartho, if he had a chance, once Othrin wronged him, shamed him, did all that to him, I think any chance
he didn't have the guts. And the sorry thing is, he had a father that he could have looked up to even more than Othrin Jr. could look up to Othrin Sr.
Yeah.
And he wasted all of it. So I had no respect for that character. He was weak. He was cowardly. He was into the trappings and the wealth and none of the responsibility. And he had plenty of chances to grow up in this book, and he never took them.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I don't even look at him as a tragedy. I look on him as a train wreck. And if I'd been his father, I would have struck him off the inheritance list real early.
Yeah. Layla, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I was actually thinking, making these calculations about Sinti as well. In that really Sinti, he wanted to be king.
Yes.
But he really didn't, he was kind of like Harris? Thank you. He was like Harris in that jumping in to try to solve the problem.
I'd put that on his father, though.
Yeah.
Because if his father had appointed him the heir when Bartho was extremely proven over and over again to be incompetent, if his father had the guts to elevate him, none of this would have happened.
That's true.
None of it. And that was the one big flaw of his father, who was in every other way an admirable person.
I think you hit the nail on the head, Jenny, that when Welly finally did right by Senti, acknowledged him as his legitimate child,
he should have
makes him a prince.
Bartho off
he
the board.
Should have disinherited Bartho and made Senti the heir, because Senti
had what it took.
Yep.
And Senti wasn't going to give up that he had what it took, because Bartho was a weakling. So I see Senti as the tragic character here.
Yes.
Because if he had been given his due,
that's a great point.
That whole train wreck. And why was Welly so blind?
Yeah.
What held him back from actually making the decisive choice? When he made the decisive choice with Othrin, he entrusted Othrin with the South. He endured all of Othrin's flaws, but he stayed blind to Senti's strengths.
Yeah, to Senti's worth. And Senti would have been a far better king than Bartho. And Othrin, he didn't do it in exactly a great way, but he continually tried to egg Senti on to take, hey, challenge Bartho, fight him, he can't beat you, and take the throne, right? And actually, although underhanded, that probably would have been the best thing for everybody concerned.
Yeah.
But
he wouldn't have stopped it either.
Yeah, and finally when Senti did it, though, it was too late because it was in the middle of the war. Yep. So Jared says that Bartho was fun to root against, and I agree. But yeah, and I think he was a character that he definitely a train wreck, but got what was coming to him. I want to quickly discuss Thurl. And Thurl, what I love about Thurl as a character is that, he's not that guy who's aspiring for power. He's not aspiring for glory. He just wants to fight. He wants to defend Eastrom from its enemies. He goes out there and he is loyal to Othrin. And he's someone who backs Othrin no matter what. But in this book, Thurl very much, he was always there to do what was needed when it was necessary. And, they're facing this massive army, 3-1 odds. And what does Thurl do? He goes out and challenges some of the baddest warriors on their side in combat and wins, right? Breaks his arm in the process. But, Thurl is someone who I think, it was nice to see him, support Othrin in only the way that he could, right? What do you think of the character of Thurl?
I think that Thurl, and who was the other guy who was Othrin's counselor that advised him first to go to the Ani as opposed to
Glathan.
Lathan. Without those two, his kingdom would have careered off track because they are the stabilizers who held Othrin's flaws in check. And so what happens if he loses either one of them? Because they are the wisdom and they are the restraint and they are the quiet strength behind that throne.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're the ones that run things when Othrin falls off and gets drunk and goes into his little snits. And you know that's coming.
Yeah. Layla, you felt the same?
I felt the same. He's family. Thurl is family.
Yeah.
And really probably more consequential, influential to Othrin than Aliaz was, than his sister was, even though she was Othrin's wife and had, the younger. But Thurl is the one out there really that knows, all about what he's trying to do and the challenges he has and advises him. Hopefully he's is able to stick around.
They're the last two sort of mentor figures
Right.
Othrin will listen to.
Yeah.
So what happens if something comes between that? The other thing I wonder is what you're going to do with Candlelove.
Candlelove. Interesting. Candlelove, a character I want to speak of as well. Othrin Younger's wife. Loved him, married him because obviously she wanted to be a queen, but also because she actually loved him, thought she could be a wise queen and advisor, someone who is devout, pious, very much old guard bred, but with a bit of a forward-thinking, vision. Someone who now she's lost that position. She's not.
Yeah. So are you going to fade her into the background, or is she going to have a role play? I wondered about that because she didn't seem like an inconsequential character.
No, I can say that she's not. I can say that she definitely has a role to play in the future. Obviously she's going to be in mourning from her husband's death, but she's a very strong-willed, strong-backed character. And the women in my series, they're made of. I know that I've been described by my daughters as a bit of a feminist, but I want to write a series where the true heart of the series was the women, but you didn't see that right away. All you can see is a bit of the male gaze of Othrin's male gaze. But as the series progressed, you realize, oh no, it's the women that are running this thing. And I don't think until Lord and King you really came to understand that, right?
So why the heck wasn't sent to advance then? If the women were running things, they'd have squashed Bartho and shoved him off the board. Sorry, but
yeah, but it's funny that Bartho is dead now, and said he's been pushed aside. But with Eld and Viwa, they're going to a luncheon with no successors. Hyrris. And you remember back in Alliance Pride, we talked about the entire Teas plot, where there's a group of Carthaginians that always wanted to reunify Carthaginian luncheon, but have Carthagi be the ones running it. Well, Hyrris has positioned herself to do that. So again, you can see that the women in this book, they're the ones making the really big power plays, the ones that are really starting to reshape the game board. Right. And
so we don't worry about Night Soul, we worry about his wife.
Barbas. That's an interesting observation. Well, we haven't seen Barbas or Night Soul yet.
Well, we sort of have, because she's the one that appointed Lycie as head of she's the one that trains all the mages.
Well, that was Nulthi. That was Nulthi, Night Soul's mother. So Barbas is married to Barbas is married to Night Soul. She's a sister.
But her mother was the one that trained all of the mages.
It was Night Soul's mother. Night Soul's mother. Barbas is
But Barbas is married into that family.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So you know that Barbas is powerful. You know that she's deadly. You just haven't seen her yet. Othrin killed Nulthi. You saw Nulthi. you saw how powerful she
Well,
was.
if the women are running things, then maybe that's what triggers Nightsoul to go after his vengeance is when his wife decides.
Well, we're gonna learn a lot more, I think, about Night Soul and that whole thing. I mean, I know for Janny and Layla, a lot of you got some eye openers with the mages especially in Lion's Pride, when you saw the coven, and then you continue to get more information about them, little bits and pieces. But I think,
Well, wasn't the coven working with the gods to sink Atlantis?
yeah, and I think you're going to see. Uh, I keep promising, but book 6, A Black Dragon on Red. Get ready for a real turn of events,
I'm
and
looking forward to it.
a real turn of events. I think
2 more years, we'll have all the books. Just 2 more years.
I wanted to. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Layla.
Oh, I wanted to say something about Candelove. She was aware of the intrigue that the younger might be walking into. So that does show that she's as much a strategizer as Scylla in some ways. And I think I think she will angle to marry one of the other sons. But I'm trying to think. So she worships the 6.
Mm-hmm. Well, sorry, Candelavi is no. She worships the single god. She's devoutly old Atalantean like that, But she seems like, although she's very devout, she seems like she's smart enough to understand the need for the 6. She's smart enough to understand the way the politics moves. I mean, she seems well trained by her father, the Bard, who of course is a political animal, and
so she'll pick the opposite side then.
So we'll see with her.
But what I didn't get about her is why she didn't clobber that stupid man who was her husband and drag him to bed before he went off to war. She should have got herself pregnant. And I'm like, lady, get on with it, because you may not have any more time.
That would have been the smart play, but it was interesting, I think, to see her, as she seemingly would have been a really good queen and would have been a great advisor for the younger. Unfortunately, that didn't come to fruition, though. I want to quickly say, Chimapo, wonderful supporter of the community, awesome person. Thank you so much for coming by. No such thing as late. Thanks so much for coming to support. Another person who is, I'm assuming that by this he's finished Chimapo, I'm guessing. Chimapo did get the book recently, so I'm not sure if he's read the whole thing already, but the fact that he's here, again, to support is amazing, but I'm wondering if he's read it and if he liked it. So I hope that if that's the case, he did. So Chimapo, if you read the book and you've enjoyed it, thank you for doing so. So, but yeah, so Candle is one of those characters I didn't want to discuss. I'm glad that you brought up, Layla. Thank you for doing that. Quickly, there's a couple more characters I want to discuss as we're winding down here. I want to go back to Hyrus, the haughty princess, and because this whole thing starts out with her, as Layla, said, she got herself captured, knowing that she's probably gonna go into a trap. She does it anyways. She almost gets raped by Raima. She takes her vengeance pretty cruelly. You know what I mean? She carves coward, in Yima's forehead. She's still pretty badass. She's pretty ruthless, and she's someone to be contended with, and she's Hurt's heir. So, what kind of reign? And again, now she's positioned to be the heir of Alden Viwa and take over both Luncheon and Karthuki. What do you think she's going to be like as a ruler?
A nightmare. Kind of an off with their head. People are going to have to protect their foreheads for sure. I was thinking Lysie's going to have to protect her forehead from her. Yeah. So, but in all seriousness, very, I think disorganized, not following through.
Well, her husband's kind of a weak ass too.
mm,
Definitely
Jane.
can't, not an influence on her at all. You can't hold her back.
No, Jane isn't. Jane bows to
Right.
her as the princess, right?
right.
So yeah, it should
So
be. What do you think, Jenny?
If Othrin goes drunk in grief and sit on his ass, she's going to definitely go and make a mess.
Yeah.
But sooner or later, they're going to come head and head, even though he likes her.
Well, she's his goddaughter. He loves her.
Yeah,
She looks at her and she loves him as a father figure. They're close, but
I
they've
figure
had
that
big
her
issues too.
hot-headed idiocy maybe will be what shakes him into action.
Ah, okay.
Maybe.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Thank you, Chibapo. So great to hear you enjoyed the book. So, but I also want to give last two characters. The first one who wasn't seen in the book, but of course was back in East Realm running the kingdom for Othrin. That was Glathan while he was at war. Glathan's getting old now. He's up there. He's more the kind of give those roles to hang back and be an administrator and run things rather than to go to battle. How is Glathan going to help keep Othrin afloat now that Othrin's lost his heir? How's Glathan going to help keep things together?
Well, he wasn't very successful shaking him out after Alias. He ran things, and he didn't have two fractious sons who are now stepping up in rank to contend with. So I don't see things being terribly peaceful on the whole front.
Right.
But yeah, if he didn't succeed in shaking Othrin out after Alias, how's he going to deal with this? I think it's going to be he's biting off more than he can chew this time. And I really like Lathan as a character. I think he is one of the steady keels underneath of the realm. And if he loses his grip to these other forces or can't shake Othrin out of it, things could get pretty hairy for Lathan.
Yeah.
I agree. What do you think, Layla? That's an excellent point, Jenny. What do you think, Layla?
I absolutely feel the same way. Pardon me. I like that point that Janny made that Othrin went off the rails after Alias, and now with his son, and after he's already admitted his faults, he really can't go out womanizing again. So he's got to do something,
Yeah.
And it might have something to do with his other children, and maybe feeling that the loss of one child makes him think of all the other children out there.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, something is being set up between, not officially, but it sounds like he's interested in seeing Lucifer.
Yeah.
So there's got to be some kind of intersection that's going to happen.
Also, is he going to marry again?
Huh? Oh, that's right. Oh.
He's still young enough to keep going, so there's a power vacuum.
Oh, now I'm back to Candela.
Well. This is a really interesting thread upon that. So let's just think about one thing here. So Sila basically deceived Othrin, knowing that Othrin the Younger was going to die, but didn't tell Othrin and made Othrin think that he was the one who's going to die. Is he going to hold that against her? Even though they've made up now and he's admitted that he's wrong and they've reconciled and they're as close as they can be, and she supported him unfailingly through all these trials in the book. How's that going to play?
I wondered that he seemed to take it calmly at the moment, the realization.
Oh, no, he didn't. He fell into immediate tailspin. Yeah. He immediately became ineffective. And the one thing that we know is after Alias died, that's when he made the big panic decision over the children being abused. And while he did the correct response, which was gut the guys on the spot, he did not use rule of law to do it. So when he acts, he's going to act unstable.
Yeah, well, when Alias died, he went off chasing all kinds of battle, putting himself in all kinds of stupid positions, he went off the
It
rails.
was,
Jen.
it was suicidal in
fun.
some ways, and he made very bad decisions, and Lathan could not stop any of it. He could only patch it.
Yeah.
So I see him as a loose cannon, and he has immense charisma and an immense following, and a lot of people who will follow him to the death and get swept away by his idealism. He's going to be trouble, and now he's got a whole army of slaves.
Yeah, he's freed. He's a liberator now. He's freed the slaves. The head of the slave army is now a king under Othran, and but with Othran,
and
never,
when is the Antali going to start messing with his two sons?
That's a great point too.
Yeah. You have to wonder. With Othran, he's got so many enemies. At some point, he's faced off a lot of them, but
didn't he piss off that one that he was on the way through the south? There was one kingdom he had to cross.
Well,
and he pissed off one of the women there, big time bad.
Well, luckily he killed her before Tarlis. He managed to kill Tarlis, but
yeah, but didn't she have offspring?
Yeah, and one of her offspring is now marched in his loyally in his following and
loyally. Are we sure?
But I do want to quickly get to what Jared's saying. It said, will the confessions continue? Well, I mean, certainly the reveals will continue, Jared. I mean, there's a lot more we have to learn. We have to learn all about, potentially Night Soul. We have to learn what's going in Barafit. Are the Barafitish going to come for Othran after he so greedily tried to demand
they swore
their
they would.
They swore they would. We'll see. I mean, a lot of time has passed since that happened, but we'll see. What's going on with the Anib? Are they, in a way, they're like the proxy rulers once again of Akremia. What are they doing there, and what's going to happen there? Lycie's in control, but she's as volatile, or if not more volatile, than Othran. So, what's going to happen there? Seemingly, the saving threat is certainly quelled for now, but there's still kingdoms there. They can find a way. They got ships. They could be coming. Some of them could be come back around for a second
we don't know what the history is too, because we know the Anib used to rule there, but then they didn't. What drove them out?
Well, what we do know about the Anib is that, and we expand this in Alliance Pied, is that the Anib ruled Eltnia, and then some of their subjects rebelled against them, and ended up slaughtering Ungala, their queen, and they slaughtered that kingdom, and then they just abandoned Eltnia. That was too much for them. The betrayal, the death of their queen. They abandoned Eltnia and they left. And ever since then, Eltnia in a way has been in turmoil in some ways, right? So Ingersa recounted, some of those events in Alliance Pride. But
we still don't know what was driving that rebellion back home.
Yeah, so there's a lot again to be discussed, revealed, with only so many books left, 2 books left in the series. You can expect to get a lot more of those, of course, in A Black Dragon on Red, book 6 of the Drowned Kingdom Saga, that should be coming out in the spring of 2026.
Oh, great.
But I do want to, as we wind down here, I do want to once again, before we go to the ending part of the live here, is once again ask my brilliant friends here, what are your biggest predictions for book 6 of Black Dragon on Red? Layla?
My biggest is, I think, I'm going to make a wild prediction. I think, in memory of the younger, that Othran, first of all, is somehow Athen will be involved, and he is going to allow for gay marriage in his kingdom. That's
wow.
My prediction.
Okay, that's huge. That would be huge.
In honor of his son, because that's what the younger said he would do in honor of his love for Athen, even though he could never be with Athen. So
Wow.
I think there's that thread out there somewhere. And maybe that's just my hopeless romantic. um, and, you know, I, um, I predict that Candelov is going to be a player.
Player. Okay. Okay. Those are two excellent predictions. We'll see if they come to fruition. Janny, what do you got for me?
I think Othran is not going to handle grief well. I think we're going to see a repeat of his ineptness after Aliaz died. And I don't see any single leader able to hold everything in line. So while he becomes passive, I see Hyrus, I see Lysi, I see his two sons split in East Realm. I see all kinds of chaos happening because there is no stable ruler, there is no stable alliance. It was the triplicate alliance that held the middle of that kingdom together, and that is now dissolved. So I predict immense upheaval until he shakes it off and decides to act. And given the fact that he goes a little haywire while grieving, when he cocks off, he may not cock off in quite the right direction.
Hmm. Okay.
And
Well,
and I figure somehow or another, you got to start playing your cards with Janny and Night's Hole pretty soon, or it's going to be a tomato surprise in the final book. So I see those threads emerging.
okay.
So I see a fragmentation of Eltnia. And
Okay.
bigger forces coming to bear to feed on that carcass, while Othran is incompetent.
All right. Well, those are great predictions as usual. So many of your predictions have come true. It's hard to fool you both. You're far too intelligent, too savvy, too well read, too insightful. We shall see. I will.
Well, also the Gods' War is going to start to filter down.
Oh, yes.
I have
Yes.
one more.
Yes. Go ahead, Layla.
Baby number 7.
Oh, you think there'll be another kid?
I think there'll be another kid too.
Ah, okay, okay. So we'll see. Arthur's still, young enough to have kids, certainly. So is Sila,
Yeah.
barely, but
We need more mages, though.
barely, but she's on that cusp.
Well,
But
we
yeah,
haven't addressed why the mages are disappearing.
Good point.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's going to have to reveal itself at some point.
Yeah, why are the mages drying up? There was a thought that Hyrus might be the last one. What's going on? So yeah, there's a lot of threads still need to be pulled and teased. I
That'll
hope.
fuck over Lysi if suddenly the power starts to drain away from what she does.
Yes, it would, wouldn't it? It would. If Lysi's the head of the coven, if the mages are all going to die out, then what's going to happen, right?
Or their powers are going to wane and lessen.
Yeah.
Like again, the Gods' War is going to enter in here, and there's a link between that because it was the mages and the gods that jointly decided to sink Atlantis.
Yeah, it's there's a lot to resolve. I will say this about a Black Dragon and Red that, there's that book in this series where when the book starts, you're like, what's going on here? I think you might feel that way for the first third of A Black Dragon and Red, but I think as that first part, evolves.
Probably not, because you've seeded enough greater powers at play that have kept their cards hidden. And they just have started to show that when they start to play, it's going to shock the people who are the players on the stage, but not your readers, because you kind of braced us for it.
Okay, well, we'll see if I have the ability to shock. Certainly, I think book 6, part 1 will be informative. And I think the shocks will come in parts 2 and 3. But we shall see if I'm able to shock and surprise you two, which is very hard. I want to give you both the opportunity. Again, thank you so much. I'm just so blessed that people such as you, wonderful, intelligent, busy people, are willing to take this time out of their lives to discuss, of all things, my book, right? I just think that it's just so, it's just such a privilege. And again, I am so humbled that you're willing to do it. I want to give, and quickly, the Fantasy Thinker says, there will be a showdown with an angel at some point. Okay, well, we'll see if that comes to fruition, Jared. But I want to give the opportunity, both of you, to just let everyone know where we can find you in the space, what you do, YouTube, websites, books, etc. If you can just let everybody know, those who may not know for some reason. Layla?
I'm can be found on Instagram, sometimes Twitter, X. I edit a magazine, and I also write poetry and short stories. Still working on the whole novel thing. So you guys are inspirations. And yeah, so I have a chapbook coming out of poetry coming out in the fall, I think. So that's what's happening right now.
Fantastic. Congratulations. And where can we find you on socials?
Ballady Magazine on X or Instagram are good. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And thanks again, Layla, for being here.
It's sure.
a real privilege. Janny, my favorite author.
I have an extensive website that is loaded with all kinds of excerpts and gives you all the lowdown on my art and my writing, because I illustrate and write. If you spend time on YouTube, I do have a YouTube channel. It has some book trailers for some of my work. Check them out. I also frequent Blue Sky, Twitter. I have a fan page at Facebook that's run by my web guy, and I have a chat forum on my website that's devoted to my work, and also any other book you want to discuss there. So I don't think I'm difficult to find.
Thank you so much, Janny. Of course, Janny is my favorite fantasy author. I made no bones about that. And those of you who have not checked out Layla in her space, magazine, and of course Janny's books and all the wonderful things that she's written, then you're missing out. So once again, it's P.L. Stuart, Drowned Kingdom Saga, 5 books out. Book 6 of Black Dragon Red expected in the spring of 2026, and hopefully sometime in 2026, early 2027. Janny and Layla will do me the honor once again of joining me to discuss that book once it's been released and once it's ready.
Oh, of course. I wouldn't miss it. And I would not miss it.
I would be honored. And of course, Taylor, hopefully will be able to join us for that. Because she was missed, Taylor from Maed Between the Pages, and hoping she's doing well. So that's it. Thanks again for tuning into the deep dive into A Pack of Wolves. And we'll see you back in 2026 or 2027 to discuss A Black Dragon Unread, Book 6. Thanks again to my wonderful guests, Layla and Janny, for joining me. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.